Let's do a quick review. I think we're in chapters 5.5, somewhere around that. But before we even start, let's do a quick review. There's a verse in the Torah. The verse says, "Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od beficha uvilvavcha la'asoto." It is very close to you, this thing, which means the Torah, to do it in your mouth and in your heart. So God comes to the Jewish people and He tells them in a verse in the Torah, to keep the Torah is easy. It's very close to you. But, as every person who tries to keep the Torah knows, it doesn't look like it's easy. What do you mean it's easy? Where's the easy part? We don't find the easy part. It doesn't seem so very easy. You can have people who are Orthodox Jews for 50, 60, 80, 70 years fail constantly. And they do fail constantly. All the time, all day long. Hundreds of times per day. Person goes against God. So the question is, what do you mean when the Torah says, Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od? How do you think, Jeff? When the Torah says it is very close to you. And the whole purpose of the Tanya is going to try to explain to us how it is close to you. And it is going to do it in two ways. The two ways, there's going to be a short way and a long way. Whatever that means, we're going to see later on. It's going to be a short way, how to make it close. And there's going to be a long way, how to make it close. That's the introduction, that's the purpose of the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe compiled the entire Tanya. If you open up the Tanya, you'll notice there's nothing new over there. It's all quotes from the Gemara, from the Midrash. It looks like there's nothing new. It calls it a compilation of words. But the topic is a topic that was never discussed in any of the books. It is a compilation of other works. He puts them together and he shows us from different parts of the Gemara, different parts of the Midrash, how to achieve this thing, this closeness that we're talking about. Okay. So before we start these two ways, how to get close to God, the Tanya first has to define what is a Jew. And the Tanya in chapter Aleph, if you remember, gives us a definition of a Jew. A Jew is a creature both good and evil. That's what a Jew is. And you would say to yourself, but everybody is a creature of good and evil, not just a Jew. He says, no. By a Jew, it's different. How is it different by a Jew? The difference by a Jew is that the two people, the good person and the evil person, we'll explain what, and the not good person, lives within him at the same time. In other words, he lives a double life constantly. Everything that happens in his life by a Jew, he sees it from two different viewpoints. And that's where the choice comes in, because there are two different viewpoints. And we discussed it, we started a discussion with the descent of the neshama, of the soul, when it comes down here into this world. That's how we discussed this. We started this whole discussion. The neshama descending, coming down to this world. And then we explained that every Jew has two souls. One is the animal soul, and the other is the godly soul. And we explained the desire of the two souls. The one we are familiar with, the other one not so much. The one we're familiar with is the animal soul. This is the instinct that God put in every creature to survive. And because every creature has the instinct to survive, a Jew has the instinct to survive. which means he wants to eat, he wants to drink, he wants to propagate, he wants to be with women, with wine, good times. That soul cares nothing about nobody else, only about me. It doesn't care about my wife. It doesn't care about my friends. It doesn't care about them. Why? He will care about my wife for a reason. Because I need her for my needs. It will care about my friends because I need them. They're a good entertainment. I like this guy. He's got something to give me. He speaks words of intellect. I like intellect. Therefore, I want to be his friend. But God forbid he's going to become stupid tomorrow. I want nothing to do with him. In other words, the only reason he's my friend is because something he can give me. That's the animal soul within us. It cares about, like we say, me, myself, and I, all three of us. But nobody else, including the wife, including community. It will support the community because it realizes living in a supportive community is beneficial for it. We're a pack animal after all. So that's why this is the animal soul. The godly soul, on the other hand, which we'll have to discuss later on to see it, could not care about you at all. It never thinks about you. It doesn't care about you. It cares about one thing, God. And as you experienced right now, from my statement right now, there's not many times that we exercise this soul. Where do we only think about God? You know? It's very hard to find it. But that's the two animal souls. The animal soul and the godly soul. Yes?
When we go to the next world, our godly soul goes to the next world, right? What happens to the animal soul? Does it no longer exist after when we die?
Very good question. I'm just going
Is
to.
that why it's so
I'm just.
out to us?
I'm just going to. I don't want to blow people's mind right now, but the animal soul is higher than the godly soul.
Well, I've heard you say that before.
Yeah. So we will get to that. Right now we don't understand it yet, but we're going to see it later on. Yeah. So obviously there's an advantage to the godly soul over the animal soul, but there's an advantage of the animal soul over the godly soul. Okay. And then we discussed the godly soul. We're not going to go through all the discussion. If you want to learn more about it, you can go back to the classes. The godly soul, we said, is comprised. By the way, the godly soul and the animal soul works in tandem at the same time. So the godly soul comprised of into 10 attributes, 10 sphirot it's called. 3 of them are intellect, and the other 7 are emotional. It divides into those 2. And then we also started to talk about that the godly soul expresses itself. The way it communicates with the world is through garments. Thought, speech, and action. And we said something very controversial. We said that the garments, which means the commandments of the godly soul, the commandments that God gave us, are infinitely higher than the soul itself. If you remember, we had the whole class about it. And then two classes ago, we discussed learning Torah, and we said that learning Torah it has an advantage of all other commandments, because every other commandment is a garment. What do you mean it's a garment? For example, I get up in the morning, I put on tefillin. After I finish putting on tefillin, at the time that I'm putting on tefillin, I have God surrounding me. At the action itself, God is surrounding me. I'm enveloped by God. The tefillin is enveloping me. But once I take them off, God is not surrounding me anymore. Says Torah is different. Once you understand godliness, once you understand the intellect of God, once you understand that, then you actually grasped godliness to such an extent that the Torah calls it like food. Just like when you eat food, it becomes part of your flesh. For example, the cow that you eat becomes you, becomes part of you. The Torah that we eat, the Torah that we learn becomes part of our soul. We start thinking like God, acting like God, and so on and so forth. This is why we say the advantage of Torah is that it's not only a garment of the soul, it's also a mazon lanefesh. It's also soul, it's also food for the soul. It becomes part of the person. Which means that even after you don't learn Torah, now I'm learning Torah, I understood something, that understanding is within me. It's always there, it became part of me. Unlike the tefillin that I have to put tomorrow again, the Torah is always going to remain in me, my understanding. Okay, so this is chapter Hey that we read last time. And in chapter Hey, we discussed this a little bit more, and we got, if you want to know where we are on page 25 of chapter Hey. In the middle of the page, in the English it's page 24, it's in the middle of the page, where it says, you have a period over there, a full stop. It's right in the middle, it says, Velachen amru Razal. And this is why the sage says, page 25 or page 24, in the English. Okay. This is where we were last time. Velachen amru Razal. This is why the sage says that when a person is sitting down and learning Torah, שאפילו אחד שיושב ועוסק בתורה, that when one sits down and he busies himself with Torah, notice it doesn't say learn Torah. Page 25. In the English it should start with, where does it start in English? I'm not quite sure. You'll have to find it yourself. Yeah, we are in Perek Hey, page 25. Actually, sorry, we're in Perek Vav. Yeah. Sorry, chapter Vav, Perek 25. Yeah. ולכן אמרו רז"ל. Sorry, my mistake. Did we yes, we did do it, right? I'm not even sure that we did Perek Hey, Perek Vav. Yeah, we did it. Okay. ולכן אמרו רז"ל, and therefore the sage says, שאפילו אחד שיושב ועוסק בתורה, that even if you have one person sitting down learning Torah, it doesn't say learning, it says busying himself in Torah. What's the difference between learning and busying? One means, osek b'Torah means one makes itself Torah his business. In other words, he takes it deep. He's really into it. You can learn Torah, but it's just an education. In other words, you're not intending to do business with it. Over here, we're not talking about that kind of learning. We're talking about the kind of learning you're going to take to yourself and actually do. So it says at the moment that the person does it, Shechina shruya chulu, godliness dwells in him. Why? Because he is busying himself in the intellect of God. And the intellect of God changes him. He becomes, before that he was a person who didn't think like God, and now he is a person who is thinking like God. And this is going to be something which we're not going to go very deep now, but it's interesting to talk about it. V'cholbei asra, and every time there's 10 Jews who get together, Shchinta sharia le'olam, God dwells in them forever. Over here, it doesn't. It's something which is very controversial. I'm just going to say what it means. We're going to explain it some other time. It means that there are 10 Jews sit together and play poker. God dwells amongst them. Not because they're becoming one with God. Because the number 10, when 10 Jews come together, it's like a nuclear reaction. Before you have enough material, enough uranium, you're not going to get the fusion. But once you have 10 Jews come together, there's going to be a fusion. It doesn't matter what they do. Yeah? That's why a minyan is 10 people. Because even if they're sinners, even if they're doing something else, God is dwelling them. Even if nobody is going to pray properly, God is there. If you want God to listen to you, yeah, if a person wants, he'll better have God in mind when he prays. But if you daven with a minyan, even if none of them have any intentions, this one thinking about that, and the other one thinking about this, and this thinking about his business, and the other one thinking about the neighbor's wife, it doesn't matter what they're thinking about. It's still God is there. God is listening. That's the difference. Some other time. But if you're by yourself, person is by himself, but when a Jew doesn't nullify himself to godliness, in other words, to God's instruction, to Torah and mitzvahs, but what is he? He takes care of himself. He's separated from God. In other words, he acts like God doesn't exist. I'm taking care of me, not of God right now. אינו מקבל חיות מקדושתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. At that moment, that Jew doesn't live from, we're going to call it positive energy of God. So we're going to come into a new concept now. There's going to be two godly energies that we're going to get introduced into this world. We're going to call it the godly energy, and we're going to call the other energy the other side. If you remember, Sitra Achra. We call it the other side. What does it mean, the godly energy? The godly energy means that God has a goal with that creature or with that thing. He wants it. He wants that creature. He wants that thing. And therefore, when he gives it its energy, it wants it alive. That's one kind of energy that God gives creatures or objects or animals. So when a Jew nullifies himself to God, which means he does whatever God wants, God is giving him that type of energy. He says, I want you right now to be alive. But what happens if a Jew, God forbid, goes against God? He starts murdering people, he starts raping, whatever he's doing, going against God. What happens then? What are you going to say? That God wants it? Obviously, God doesn't want it. God makes it alive, but God doesn't want it to be alive. So you're going to ask a question. So why does God make it exist? Yeah, why does he make it exist if he doesn't want it? Yeah, so the answer is, he has a purpose for it, which we can discuss later on. There's a purpose for it. What's the purpose? We'll see later on, but there is a purpose. Specifically because of this trial of the Sitra Achra, maybe you're going to do something, we're going to discuss it later on. Think about it like this. I always give the analogy of when the Mossad went to Argentina, it was Argentina I think, to get Eichmann, right? When they put Eichmann in some room over there in Argentina, and there was, let's say, one of the women was over cooking food for the whole Mossad agents. So those Mossad agents she wanted to cook, she gave food because she wanted them alive. But you know what she also cooked? Who she also cooked for? She also cooked for Eichmann. So the question is, why is she cooking for Eichmann? There's a purpose. In other words, she wouldn't want to give Eichmann the food. She doesn't want him alive. But there's a purpose. She wants to make him into example. She wants to bring him into Israel. She wants to have a zeo. So the same thing with God. Something he gives life because he wants them alive. And something he gives life, there's a purpose. Not because he doesn't want rape and killing and all these acts that we do, that anybody does against God. He doesn't want it to exist, but it exists. In order to receive though godliness, the energy of God into us, we have to be nullified to God. The more nullified one is to godliness, the more energy, the more alive he will be. You probably heard this in many, many times. It says, "Venatati lefanecha et hachaim ve'et hamavet." God says, I gave in front of you life and death. Ubacharta b'chaim. You should choose life. He says, what kind of a statement is this? Obvious. Who is going to, if God gives in front of a person life and death, who is so stupid to choose death? And what's the answer? Who is so stupid? We are. We choose death constantly. In other words, God is the positive energy, and we choose the energy that is not positive, the death energy, to sustain us, instead of the positive energy to sustain us. By going against God. אינו מקבל חיות מקדושתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. If a person is not nullified, he doesn't get life from the holiness of God, מבחינת הקדושה ומהותה ועצמותה בכבודה ובעצמה, from godliness himself. So, how is he still alive? How does he still exist? אלא מבחינת אחוריים. He gets his energy, he gets his sustenance over the shoulder. God gives it. I need to feed you. So he throws it over the shoulder. He's not interested in the person or in the object being alive, being there. So it chucks it over the shoulder for it. מבחינת אחוריים. שיורדים ממדרגה למדרגה. And it says, but when you look at the two, they look exactly the same. I get my energy. I look a Jew that does Torah and mitzvahs, and a Jew that doesn't do Torah and mitzvahs, or a Jew that does a commandment, a Jew that does a sin. They both get life. It's the same life. That's what it looks like. So God says, no, one is positive, one is negative. How can you see? We'll discuss this later on. But this negative energy also comes for God. יורדים ממדרגה למדרגה. It goes down from one level to another level. רבבות מדרגות בהשתלשלות העולמות דרך עילה ועלול וצמצומים רבים. Like we explained before, it comes down through the worlds עד שנתמעט כל כך האור והחיות מיעוט אחר מיעוט, until the light will become so small עד שיכול להצטמצם ולהתלבש בבחינת גלות תוך אותו דבר הנפרד להחיותו ולקיימו מאין ליש. Until it exists. That object or that act actually exists. But if you ask, does God want it? Obviously not. God doesn't want it. Is there godliness inside? There has to be some type of godliness inside, but that godliness that's inside is exiled within it. It doesn't match in it. In other words, for God to exist in evil, I'm going to put quotation mark, God needs to do a miracle. For God to exist in a regular act, in a commandment, God doesn't need a miracle. It flows. It's the same energy. God cannot exist within evil. God makes it so is there, is giving it, moving it as if it is alive. In other words, the Zohar gives it one of the greatest examples that you can think. Think about it like in modern terms, the closest you can come to, it's like a zombie. A zombie is not alive, but it's moving. It doesn't have a soul. The soul is already gone, but it's walking. That soul is God. God is moving the object or the act or the human being. He's moving him, but the energy is there. It looks like he's alive, but he's not there. There's no soul. The godly soul is not there. The godly energy is not there. So, but he exists, מאין ליש, he makes sure that this entity exists, שלא יחזור להיות עין ואפס כבתחילה מקודם שנברא, so that it will not return back to before it was created. Let me just stop over here. Just a quick explanation. What does it mean to make sure that the thing doesn't go back before it was created? God, I'm going to use words that don't make sense, but it's the only way to talk. Before the creation of the world, there was only God. Now, when I'm saying before the creation of the world, the words don't make sense. Because before the creation of the world, there was no the concept of before. So you cannot use time was created. Space and time were created. So when I say before, it doesn't make sense. But it's only just to understand what I'm talking about, right? So there's a level of godliness before the creation of the world. Yeah? There's a level of godliness, even exists now, before the creation of the world. If you ask God, if God wants to destroy the world right now, he doesn't need to bring a flood. He doesn't need to bring an atomic bomb. He doesn't need to bring some power to destroy the world. All God needs to do is to stop creating it. In other words, in order to destroy the world, God doesn't need to do an act. He needs to stop doing an act. Right now, there's a world, the world exists, not because there's actually so-called the world. Yeah? God is making it exist right now. In order to destroy the world, all God needs to do is stop making it exist. Thinking of it like this. It's not like you have to do an act, you have to stop doing an act. The analogy for it, I'm going to do a little bit of a not nice analogy. If you're in a hot jacuzzi, yeah, in order to go to the bathroom, right, you don't need to do something. You need to stop holding. You know, that's what you need to do. You don't need to do an act. You need to stop doing an act in order to go to the bathroom. Right? The same thing with the creation of the world. So in order for God to destroy these things, this evil, he doesn't need to do anything. He needs to stop creating them. He's creating them for a purpose, as we will talk a lot about. ולכן נקרא עולם הזה ומלואו, and therefore, this physical world, the entirety of what we see, of what we experience, the world we live in, is called עולם הקליפות, the world of shells. What is being shells? Dead bodies without a fruit, like the zombie, like we discussed before. It's the world of shells, וסטרא אחרא. And the other side, the entire world is full of anti-godliness. Let's go it this way. ולכן, and therefore, you look at the world, and the world shouts at you, God doesn't exist. The world is shouting constantly, God is not here. The stronger I am, the more people I kill, the more life I will get. That's what the world tells you. The truth is that if you behave the way God... Let's take an example. You have two businesses. One business, the guy is honest, never goes against the Torah. And the other business, the guy is a thief. Always, not always, but when he can find a good deal, he cuts corners, he cheats, he lies, he does whatever he thinks. Between me and you, who's going to succeed? The world shouts at you. You know who's the one who's going to succeed? The cheater, the liar. The mafia guy has more money than the teacher. And there's nothing you can do about it. Right? He's going to have more money. He cheats, he lies, he steals, he robs, he does whatever he does. He's going to get more money. And the world shouts at it constantly. That's what the world says. Godliness is not ruling the world over here. You know who's ruling? We are. ולכן, and therefore, Kol ma'aseh olam hazeh. By the way, when it says all the acts of this world, it means all the acts of this world. It means also the acts that we might think you're doing it for God. They have some touch of you not just doing it for God. We are also doing it because we feel. In other words, think about it. Self-benefit, to feel good about ourselves, to get self-satisfaction. I did it. I learned today something. Whatever it is. כל מעשי עולם הזה קשים ורעים. They're bad, they're evil. והרשעים גוברים בו. And we see that the evil people in this world, they win. They're uplifted. כמו שכתוב בעץ חיים, שער מ"ב, בסוף פרק ד'. Like it says in over there. We're not going to do the Haggaha. It's a Kabbalistic thing. We're going to skip it for today. Maybe we come to it later on. Now, so far, let's divide the world. So when a person is nullifying himself to godliness, how can a person nullify himself to God? He does whatever God tells him. So either he learns Torah, or he does a mitzvah, he does a commandment. So at that moment, he's nullifying himself to God. And anything else he does besides that, what is that called? Where does he get his energy when he does anything else? That's the other side. That's how we hold so far. In other words, it doesn't matter what you do. If it's not a commandment, and if it's not Torah and mitzvahs, it is the other side. And as we're going to see, unfortunately, many times, even when we do the commandment, there's another side involved in it, which we discussed later on. Yeah? Even when we do the commandments, sometimes we do the commandments for the wrong reasons. So it looks like, hey, so the entire day, let's put it that way, whether you're Orthodox, whether you're not Orthodox, it doesn't matter who you are. So it comes out that the entire day I'm busy with what? I am actually getting the energy of what? Of the other side. So that's what's going on over here. So the entire day you want to tell me, okay, I put on tefillin, that took, 10, 15 minutes, and I daven for another, let's say, half an hour. So for an hour, let's give it an hour. An hour I was involved with godliness, and even that hour, everybody knows that I wasn't really involved in it because I was thinking constantly about something else and doing something constantly about something else. So I don't know out of that how much did I get godly energy, and the rest of the day, what about that? So now we're going to get introduced to another concept that we didn't discuss before. Ella. But you should know שהקליפות הן נחלקות לשתי דרגות. Those shells, those other energy, those zombie energy divides into two levels. זו למטה מזו. They both, other side, in other words, they're both not godly. Let's discuss this a little bit before we even continue. Anybody, yeah, we all old people over here, we all remember. Everybody remembers the Yellow Pages? Yeah, everybody remembers the Yellow Pages, these big books that everybody used to have. It was white pages, yellow pages, right? So everybody knows that nobody used the Yellow Pages. Why did not use the Yellow Pages? Because the kids, actually, it depends on your age, yeah? But I remember myself, I didn't use the Yellow Pages. I used to call 411, and it used to cost money. And when you call 411, usually your parents are not happy. Why are you calling 411? You're wasting money when you can use the Yellow Pages, right? So even though the Yellow Pages were there, yeah, people didn't use them. But you know what? So it wasn't used for that. Anybody knows what the Yellow Pages was used for? What was used for? No. What did you use it for?
You let your kids...
Very good. It was a booster seat. Everybody used the yellow pages as a booster seat. That's what it was. It was a booster seat. You needed some. You have a small kid, put the yellow pages, he sits, that's the yellow pages. Is there anything wrong with it? Using the yellow pages as a booster seat? It has one purpose. What's the purpose of the yellow pages? To look for the. So why are you using it as a booster seat? That's not its purpose. But there's nothing wrong in it, right? So you have a chumash at home. Can you use your chumash as a booster seat? Why not? It has one purpose. I'm going to use it for another purpose. What is it? Very good. What does holy mean, though?
Separate from this world.
Excellent. Very good. It means I designated it not to be used for earthly purposes. It is designated for God. So whenever you think, this is also a good way to talk about children when you tell them to respect their bodies. You can't just tell them your body is holy. Don't use it for other purposes. What do you tell them? Your body was made by God and it is designated to be used for what? For God. Those parts of us are designated to be used for God, not for not for our pleasure, but they were designated for God. That's why God designed them. To be serve Him, not to serve us. So every time we use our body parts, the instrument around us, not for God, those instruments are what? Have a non-godly energy in them. Every time the Sefer Torah or the Chumash, it has a godly energy. Everybody realizes you cannot use the Sefer Torah for mundane purposes. You feel it. You notice how we feel it? We're not going to do that. We're not going to put a kid on the Chumash to sit. But in that, we're going to see there are two levels. נחלקות לשתי מדרגות, זו למטה מזו. So the word holy, whenever you think about something which is holy or something which is godly energy, think about it, it's been designated for godliness. Its purpose is to serve God. That's what holy. Our purpose is what? To serve God. God created this instrument to serve Him. What do I do most of the day?
Serve yourself.
Oh, most of the day, instead of serving God, who do I serve? I serve me. I'm much more interesting than God is. At least to myself. Yeah? But in that, we're going to see that there are two levels. And these two levels are anti-godliness, like we could call it. And in these two levels, there's a lower level and an even lower level. Okay? המדרגה התחתונה, the lowest level in it is what? היא שלוש קליפות הטמאות. They are the three shells that are completely impure. ורעות לגמרי. They're completely bad. ואין בהם טוב כלל. And there is no good in them at all. By the way, we need to explain this. When it says there's no good in them at all, it doesn't mean that. Obviously. How do I know it doesn't mean that? Because if there's no good in them at all, God wouldn't make them. There has to be some good that can come out of them. Let's take an example. A lion. Right? A lion.
Oh, lion.
A lion. Right? When it comes to eating, or a pig, when it concerns for me to get my nourishment from a pig, there is no good in it for me as a Jew at all. In other words, there's no way for me as a Jew to eat this pig and to elevate that energy to godliness, as we're going to talk later on. It cannot be done. Therefore it says, En behem tov klal, don't deal with him. In Hebrew, the word prohibited is called asur, which asur means jailed.
Means what?
Jailed, in jail. It is in jail in the hand of the klipot. In other words, you have no way to take that energy and elevate it. So God tells you, because you have no way to elevate it, those things are prohibited from you. Your neighbor's wife is prohibited from you. There's no way to elevate that relationship with her. Don't talk to her, don't dance with her, don't do anything else with her.
Touch.
Don't touch, that's right. And these clippers are called, ונקראו במרכבת יחזקאל, the prophet Yechezkel calls these clippers, רוח סערה, it calls it a stormy wind, וענן גדול, and a big cloud. ומהן, and from these clippers, נשפעות ונמשכות נפשות כל אומות העולם. All the idol worshippers, all the nations who worship idols comes from them. וקיום גופם, and their bodies. Also, נפשות כל בעלי חיים מטמאים. All the souls of the animals that are impure. ואסורים באכילה. Therefore, they are prohibited in eating, because there's no way for us to elevate them, as we're going to learn later on. וקיום גופם, and they're made of that specific anti-godly energy. וקיום וחיות כל מאכלות אסורות מהצומח. Oh, this is another thing that most people don't realize. People think that only a pig is not kosher. An apple, though, it's not so bad, right? An apple is always kosher. So it happens to be that the apple, on the first 3 years after a person plants a tree, the first 3 years of that tree, the fruits are prohibited. And you're going to ask, how much is the fruit prohibited? Is the apple prohibited? As much as a pig. No, it's not as much as a pig. It's more than a pig. How do I know? Because the halacha says that if you know you're sick and you only have a pig available and an apple available, and the apple has to be from the first 3 years, rather eat the pig than the apple. Why? The apple in the first 3 years is more prohibited than the pig. Yeah? So, at the first 3 years, the energy that makes the apple comes from where? It's anti-godliness, that energy. After 3 years, it becomes godly energy. כמו ערלה, for example, like ערלה, וכלי הכרם, another example, is you put two seeds together, וכמו שכתוב בעץ חיים, like it is written, בעץ חיים, שער מ"ט, פרק ו'. Look at the Arizal, he explains over there. וכן, and also, קיום וחיות כל המעשה, דיבור ומחשבה, and also the existence of all the actions, all the speech, all the thoughts of the 365 negative commandments, and all the subsidiaries, like it's written over there. So we said, just to review, that there is a type of energy within the world, let's call it my neighbor's wife energy, that since I can never elevate it, I cannot bring it, I cannot make it godly, it's not within my humanly powers to make my neighbor's wife relationship godly, it says stay away from it. Don't ever come close to it. The question is, what about my wife? What type of energy is my wife? Is it a godly energy or is it a non-godly energy? But I'm doing it for myself, I'm not doing it for God. See what the problem is? I understand that the neighbor wife, when I have a desire for my neighbor's wife, that's for sure non-godliness. That energy. I shouldn't go there. I shouldn't even come close over there. What about my wife? So we're going to be discussing in next chapter. This is called Klipas Noga. It depends on your intentions. There's the world that depends on it. It's like Schrodinger's cat when it comes to science. It lives in both states at the same time. It can be klipa, it can be evil, it can be good. Depends what you do with it. You've got $100 in your pocket. You can go with it to the casino, or you can build a hospital. It's up to you. See, if you steal money, that's for sure you cannot elevate. But here, this is money that you worked for. Money that I worked for, now it depends what you do with it. In other words, the intentions now is everything. If I have the intentions to serve, to use that money for godliness, it's going to go up to godliness. If I have the intentions to use that concept or that thing for myself, it's going to come down to become evil. Yes?
Contradicts what we studied before.
Go ahead.
If we do a mitzvah, whether I have the intention or not, I'm still
The,
have intention or not.
excellent, very good. Over here, we're not talking about a mitzvah. We're not talking about a mitzvah. What are we talking about? A steak. I have a steak in front of me. I'm going to eat it. Very good. I have a steak. It's not a mitzvah. If you're talking about steak on Shabbos, you're right. Steak on Shabbos is a mitzvah. But I'm talking about steak on a Tuesday. Or I'm talking about, so steak on a Tuesday, that depends how you treat the steak. Let's say there's water over here. This water, I have the power to elevate it to godliness or to bring it down to the energy that's anti-godliness. A Jew is the bridge between those two worlds. He chooses what energy the water gets. If I'm going to drink the water because I want to teach the class better, if I drink the water, that's one thing. If I'm just thirsty and I'm drinking it and I'm not thinking about God, I'm just thirsty. Bracha means nothing. Why am I drinking it? The bracha, now you understand why we say brachas. The bracha is to remind you, to think, to have the intention that this is going to God. Now you understand why we need to say bracha. The bracha is there as a reminder. It reminds me that before I drink it, I better elevate it. But the bracha doesn't elevate it, the intention elevates it. The bracha is the reminder that I need to. Yeah? Yeah. So that's, say what you said? That's why you need to say amen, because that became holy. It became a Sefer Torah all of a sudden. Until now, it was just a klipa. It was just an energy which was neither here nor there. Once a person elevated this, everybody says amen. You just elevated the water. You just made it into godly water. Or if you drank it, by the way, just so people will understand, a prisoner of war, let's say in the Holocaust, when somebody is in a prison camp and he's eating food in prison camp because he wants to survive, that's klipa. The fact that he wants to survive, who wants to survive? The animal soul wants. It has nothing to do with God. If he wants to survive, he says, I'll tell you a story. There was once a very fat sage. One of the very fat sage. He became morbidly obese, as they call these guys. Like 600 pounds, 700 pounds. Very, very fat sage. And somebody came over to him and he says, what's going on over here? You're supposed to control your evil inclination. What's up with you? So he told them, my father was killed, was murdered for Kiddush Hashem. Yeah, the Romans took him. I don't remember exactly what was the case over there. Yeah, but he was burnt for Kiddush Hashem. He says, the reason why I'm eating, so when I die for sanctifying God's name, it's going to take a long time. I'm going to sanctify God's name, not just like my father was thin. It took 15 seconds and he passed away. I'm going to really sanctify God. It's going to take a long time until all the fire will consume my flesh. So if that's the intention that you eat, you're elevating the food. In other words, he's constantly thinking when he eats how he's going to elevate the food. That's one thing. Yeah? But we eat for what? Because it tastes good. It's good.
You could make up anything that way.
Excuse me?
If you're creative enough, you can do anything.
Yeah, the question is, are you going to do it? Yeah, to tell ourselves in the middle of class that it can be done is one thing. But actually to do it, to have the presence of mind constantly, all day long, that I'm doing acts for God is much harder than it seems.
But it's almost like people rationalize what they do and they excuse it by saying...
Very good. That's why we learned before that Kol Maaseh Olam Hazeh, all the acts of this world has evil in it. Because of what you're saying, like don't think that when you do all these things, you're doing it for the right reason. You're fooling yourself. Right. Yeah. So this is the world. In other words, over here, up to now, nobody likes this chapter, because this chapter tells you how you can never serve God. You'll never be able to serve God. You remember how we started? The book was written in order to find a way to serve God. And this chapter, after understanding it the way we understand it right now, it seems like we're not. But that's why we're going to go next class to the next chapter. And we're going to see, maybe it's not so simple. Maybe there is ways. Maybe there's ways around it. That's going to be busy.
So you don't want
Next
to just
question.
read one chapter?
No, you don't want just one chapter. You're not going to get anywhere with one chapter. That's why that's right. Very good. It is jailed within the klippa. You can never get elevated. A kosher steak, it's up to you. If you have the right intention, it's going to go up to God. If you have the wrong intentions, we're going to see what's going to happen to it next time.
So if you do mitzvahs just to get ahead, people do mitzvahs just to get ahead.
That's right. People, I'll tell you what. I do mitzvahs all day long just to tell God, I don't owe you anything anymore. Leave me alone. Let me do my stuff. I mean, I do the mitzvah. The mitzvah itself is godly. The intentions is the wrong intention. Obviously.
Right. Just doing the mitzvah alone is not.
Yeah. And we're going to discuss that also later on.
This is the hard, being a Jew is the hardest job. It's a full-time, did they purposely make it the hardest job?
Do you remember what we said in the same? You remember what Moses said? Ki karov elecha. It is very close to you to keep the Torah. Very close to you. The whole book is going to come to explain how it is very close to you. It's not hard. It's very easy. It's very close to you. That's why we're learning it. How it's very close, and we're going to learn two ways. One long way and one short way. You'll choose yours. We'll see what it is later on.